Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofvacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofvacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul.
And this is Cheryl.
This week on the Joy Cruising Podcast, we want to share our reflections on our recent cruise, a 9-day sailing to the Southern Caribbean, ABC Islands aboard Celebrity Cruises' newest ship, the latest in its Edge class, the Ascent. Two things before we start out. Forgive me, I have a cold, so not only are you going to have to put up with my Brooklyn monotone, but you're going to have to put up with my Brooklyn monotone with the cold. The other thing is, before we start, let me shout out my longtime friend and supporter, the Reverend Lionel Evans. Lionel brought me several cups of coffee via the Buy Me a Coffee link on the Joy of Cruising podcast website. Cheryl and I used to own a chain of video stores. Remember them? For over 23 years, and Lionel was a manager for us most of those years. Last time I saw Lionel was in 2015 at the launch party for my first book, a memoir about my dance with death at age 29, one that is not about cruising and is an absolute tearjerker, was internationally awarded and launched my career as a writer. Lionel, I look forward to seeing you again. Maybe on a cruise. Friends, you too can support me in several ways on the www.thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com, and I will shout you out on the podcast as well.
This is not a review. As pictures as cruising is, I think, a visual platform like YouTube can do a much better job than us. But just some random thoughts by cruisers who are not yet YouTube bloggers.
The cruise was 9 days, a sweet spot for us. 7 days is just not quite long enough. This cruise was special in several ways. It was a celebration of our anniversary, which was 3 weeks prior in October. A cruise on Celebrity Ascent was a direct challenge to our as-yet favorite cruise, which was on Ascent's sister ship in Celebrity's Edge class, the Celebrity Beyond, 2 years prior. I often proudly mention in the same sentence that the CEO at Celebrity, who launched the Edge class, Lisa Ludolph-Perlo, was a guest on the Joy of Cruising podcast, and she too selected Beyond as her personal favorite. Lisa launched the Celebrity Edge, Apex, and Beyond before her move back to Royal Caribbean. Most significantly was the sentimental aspect of this trip. Aruba is where we celebrated our honeymoon, and this was our first return back in 32 years. Full itinerary of Ascent was embarkation at Fort Lauderdale, followed by a seaday, a stop at Cayman, Georgetown, a seaday, then Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire, then 2 seadays on the way back to Fort Lauderdale. Because Ascent was a virtual copy of Beyond, I knew going in that it was going to be difficult to differentiate between the two. Our room was fine. It represented a somewhat significant difference from our room on Beyond, in that we opted for an ocean view versus the infinite balcony we had on Beyond. I know the infinite balcony cabins on Celebrity and Royal Caribbean have been polarizing, but we found them to be fine when we were on Beyond. I have opined before that infinite balcony is fine if you judge it on its own merits and not versus a traditional balcony. If it were up to me, I never would have named it an infinite balcony.
I'm not even sure why we opted for ocean view. We probably looking to save a little. Only other thing to note on the nice cabin was the significant number of outlets and USB plugs. The other thing to note is the TV selection was good, and on most nights we were able to catch an NBA game, and on Sunday a couple of the NFL games. Embarkation was uneventful. and we went to the buffet for lunch. After a quick bite to eat, we were able to check out our cabin. The buffet on all celebrity ships I've been on, but especially on the Edge class, are outstanding. Since COVID, we generally try to minimize our intake at buffets, and we have done a couple of cruises with virtually no visits to the buffet, but they were really good on Ascent. Our first meal involved having a fresh Caesar salad made for me and then loading it up with anchovies. There's another station where there is always a great selection of cheese. A station for paninis pressed with your choice of ingredients, turkey for me. These stations were in the middle of the room, along with a complimentary beverage station that included water, coffee, and numerous beverages. Skip the fruit punch. The guava blend was good. Lemonade to die for. Lemonade was so good, Paul often opted for that instead of a can of soda at the bar just inside the buffet. The soda, beer, and espresso drinks, of course, required a drink package, which we had, or they were charged to your room. Numerous hot grill stations were on opposite sides of the buffet, and unlike some buffets, they offered completely different selections. A few standouts on the buffet hot grill stations: seafood paella. They also offer vegetarian paella. Oxtails on a couple of days, seafood pie, chicken breast fillet, whole fish complete with the heads on, all delicious. We occasionally went up to the buffet for a late snack and always finished with bread pudding with vanilla sauce. The buffet also had some themed meals. We missed Caribbean Day, but caught the seafood lunch that was amazing. Expect to be delighted with the buffet on Ascent. In fact, expect to be delighted with all of the complimentary food options. In the back of the buffet, really a separate room, was a pizza area with separate outside seating. I recall we enjoyed the pizza on Beyond, and they even allowed me to bring a bunch of anchovies from the main buffet, and they made me a whole pie with anchovies. Our first pie was not so good. The cheese was not even completely melted. Turns out that was an anomaly. The young woman who made our first pizza either didn't know how to do her job, or the oven timer was malfunctioned, because after the first undercooked pizza, it was like we remembered on Beyond. Pizza was quite good, but couldn't touch MSC. And there, our one comment of MSC having anything over celebrity.
The buffet had a nice ice cream area with a variety of flavors of hard ice cream as well as soft serve, and a rotating gelato flavor. And I love gelato. This has been a treat for me in the past, but peanut butter flavored gelato? What a waste. As with the other ships in the Edge class, on Ascent there are 4 main dining rooms, but you can eat at any one of them for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And you should try them all because they each have a selection of the menu at dinner which is specific to that restaurant. For instance, Normandy is French influence, Tuscan, Italian influence, Cyprus has a Greek influence, and cosmopolitan American style. All of the menus also contain a selection of standards that are offered at every main dining room on every night, so you can always order steak. Lucky for me, one of those nightly standard starters was escargot, my cruise ship tradition. We had 5 dinners in the main dining room, and I had escargot on each of those. We think main dining room food quality has declined quite a bit since the pandemic for cruising in general, but that is not true for celebrity. Nor have they cut back in any conspicuous way. There was still lobster night, although it is my understanding that celebrity now charges for a second lobster tail. Can anyone confirm that? I was on Norwegian last year, and after numerous evenings at the main dining room, we asked when lobster night is, and we were told that they don't do that anymore. There were a number of standout meals at the main dining room. Of course, the lobster tails, and then also the grilled sea bass.
Along with the mass grill, which serves burgers, hot dogs, and turkey burgers, which is my preference, you would be well satisfied with the main complimentary food options on Ascent. As much as we have raved about the free options on Ascent, she really shines on specialty restaurants, at least the ones we tried. I have stated that our meal on Celebrity Beyond at Le Voyage by Daniel Ballard is our best ever. We opted for a package comprised of 2 dinners and 1 lunch. We selected Fine Cut Steakhouse for one dinner. That was mostly due to sentimental reasons, I think. We celebrated our 30th anniversary on Celebrity Beyond to the Mediterranean, and at Fine Cut, they gave us a cake and some special attention. We both ordered lobster in the steakhouse as well as crab cake starters. The crab cake bready, like I would expect in the MDR. Our other specialty dinner was at Eden, and it was great, just as it was on Beyond. In fact, on Beyond, we ate there before Le Voyage, and I proclaim Eden was my best meal at sea until we tried Le Voyage. At Eden, the crab cake seemed to be straight crab and put the bready ones we had in Fine Cut to shame.
For lunch, we chose Le Bistro, a French-themed specialty that turned into Le Petit Chef with animation on the dinnerware at night. We've never been to Le Petit Chef, but I hear it's a must-do specialty when you have kids. We chose Le Bistro on a Wednesday as the menu reflected a chef's special for each day, and the Wednesday special was lobster bouillabaisse, and it was delicious. And I even ordered lobster bisque as a starter. Lobster bisque is almost always the same to me at restaurants. I suspect it's processed. This clearly was a step above, tasted very fresh with bits of lobster. Overall, Celebrity retains its place for best food at sea. Their combination of buffet, main dining rooms, and superb specialty offerings puts their food on par with Virgin Voyages, although Virgin is the better value because their food is included in the fare. Last thing about food and beverage, we had the drink package, and though I am not a heavy drinker, and Cheryl rarely drinks, it's a fairly good deal on Celebrity. That's because it can be used for the Ascent's fine selection of specialty coffees and teas, which Cheryl and I are both fond of. Some bars serve espresso drinks, but the dedicated coffee shop, Cafe El Vacío, is excellent. In addition to a full complement of tea, coffee, and espresso drinks, they display a rotating variety of pastries, cookies, macaroons, specialty breads, etc. And they're all complimentary. The one miss they had, the vegan carrot cake did not work for me at all. Last thing is water. With the drink package, it is available at all the bars and at Cafe El Vacío. A big upgrade from when we sailed Beyond is that Celebrity has jettisoned its paper water containers. Thank goodness.
You know, as we reflect back on these reflection podcasts about cruises we've done, we tend to spend an inordinate amount of time on the food. I wonder, are we typical of other couples out there in terms of how much time and energy spent on food? Let's say a little bit about activities on the ship. There were a lot, but we did not partake in a whole lot because, as I have intimated, we are big NBA and NFL fans, and any activities as secondary to the sport. You can tell when it was halftime because I would pop outside my room and head to the social club bar, which, if I were watching a sporting event at my cabin, that meant they had it on the many TVs in there. We didn't get the chance to see the comedian, a cruise ship staple of ours. This is one place my just about favorite cruise line lags versus the competitors. I just think that in a 9-day cruise, you need to feature a couple of comedians. It was similar to Beyond, also a 9-day cruise, but that was a port-intensive European cruise, so I didn't expect much in the way of comedy. We did get to see the comedian once on Beyond, and he was good. Carnival stands head and shoulders above all other cruise lines.
The first night we went to a show, it was Bridges by the Ascent entertainment cast. On the elevator on the first day, we overheard one of the performers telling a couple of girls he was in the production, and admittedly that piqued our interest. The production was outstanding, especially the vignette about the early days of hip-hop in the shadow of the Brooklyn Bridge. The next show was a headliner, Patrice Covington. We were not familiar with Miss Covington's work, but the production was called I'm Your Whitney Tonight, so we knew we were going to that. Me being the info junkie that I am, researched Patrice, and oh my gosh. Patrice's credits included background singer for Stevie Wonder, Jennifer Hudson, and Christina Aguilera. She starred in The Color Purple on Broadway, also Dreamgirls, Ain't Misbehavin', Motown the Musical, The Book of Mormon, and she had a role in A League of Their Own, the 2022 TV series.
Her performance was spellbinding and mesmerizing, and all seemed to make sense given what Paul had uncovered in his research. After all, Patrice was an Emmy winner and a Grammy nominee, and Paul had already reached out to Patrice. A couple of days later, we got to meet Patrice up close and personal when she appeared on stage and dance floor of the Martini Bar. She got the crowd up and on the dance floor, including Paul and I, singing standards of Patti LaBelle, Aretha, and Natalie Cole. We took photos with Patrice, and Paul was able to remind her, the one who had sent her the note that said, I am sitting here watching you on Celebrity Ascent. Another show we enjoyed immensely was called The Magical Bones, about a magician who grew up in UK during the era when hip-hop was exploding. He was the first Black magician we had ever seen and infused hip-hop and breakdancing into his act. He showed clips of himself performing on either The Voice or America's Got Talent. I get them confused and leaving the host astounded. Magical Bones is very popular worldwide, and I have asked him to be on the podcast. I watched a few more shows solo. They just could not pull Paul away from his Lakers. The other shows were phenomenal. They were just outstanding.
In terms of excursions, we didn't take many because we had been to a few of the ports before. We always got off the ship, just as I reminded to newbie cruisers before. And at the ports where we did do excursions, we did them through the cruise line. Something else was suggested to newbie cruisers. But you'll no longer hear me say that the cruise lines are guaranteed to never leave you behind. In a couple of weeks, on December 16th, Joy Cruising Podcast will bring you an astounding story of a family who did get left behind by a cruise ship. It's called The Galt Family Alaskan Nightmare on Norwegian Cruise Line. You don't want to miss that one. On our first stop, we got off the ship and walked the pier area in Grand Cayman. We passed on an excursion here as we have been to Cayman Islands multiple times. I mean, how often can you go to hell? That's a little inside joke for cruisers who have been to Grand Cayman. Then came Aruba, and we chose a comprehensive tour that took us to a couple of Aruba's natural bridges and a city tour, and culminated with a visit to Eagle Beach, which the guide called the third nicest beach in the world and the number one nicest beach in the Caribbean. As mentioned, we did our honeymoon here 32 years ago, and so the tour was sentimental. I suspect we chose a similar tour 32 years ago, and I wondered what was covered in each. I remember little about that first trip to Aruba 32 years ago, but one thing we do remember is on the taxi ride from the airport, the driver points out with pride and glee Aruba's first Dunkin' Donuts. And over the years, we see a Dunkin' Donuts, we would exclaim, Dunkin' Donuts! We did see a Dunkin' Donuts on the Ascent tour, but we have no way of knowing if that was the same one he pointed out so many years ago. I will say that it was old, unlike much of what we saw during the tour in Aruba, including shops like Prada, Gucci, and Louis Vuitton. Our next stop was in Curacao, which had a very nice and built-up pier area. We had been to Curacao before, and I felt an odd kinship to the place from when I had a job in financial operations for a very large U.S. firm, and I had to move millions of dollars on a daily basis, and it required me to make a call to Curacao every day. That's all I can remember about it, and I'm sure there was some kind of tax incentive associated with involving Curacao. I never met the gentleman I called every day, but as we walked among the very nice pastel-colored buildings of Curacao, I wondered if he lived in one of those buildings, which I'm sure are only in the reach of the very wealthy. Our last stop was in Bonaire, and we went on a city tour in a tuk-tuk open air-covered vehicle, as we had never been to Bonaire before. We got to see Captain Tasso during one of the stage shows. He was very polished and hilarious. He clearly had good writers. He provided his social media, and I tried to reach out, but his social media won't allow you to send a message unless he friends you. We have been fortunate enough to get a couple of retired captains on the podcast. Captain Tasso strikes me as someone who will come on the podcast while on active duty. Perhaps that's wishful thinking on my part. We'll see. Last thing, a lot happened in the Grand Plaza area by the bar. The bartenders put on their amazing show of juggling bottles and pouring multiple drinks at a time while standing on the bar.
Celebrity Ascent was a stunning ship, just like its predecessor. If there was any difference to the design, we couldn't tell what it was. Does it surpass Celebrity Beyond? Not really. They are both so close, but I give the slight edge, pun intended, to Beyond just for sentimental reasons. Milestone anniversary and our first time to the Mediterranean. The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.